It goes without saying that I am a pretty big horror fan,
I love this thing.
and since the 2020s began, we've been eating pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. Nearly every single year this decade has been a fantastic year for amazing horror movies, and 2025 was absolutely no exception. Bring Her Back, Frankenstein, Sinners, all of these films are ones that I'm going to cover someday, but there's one that might just stand above the others. Weapons. So let's do what we do and recap Zach Cregger's sophomore effort, ranking it on both the Scream scale and a brand new gauge, the kilometer. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Casey, and today we're going to be taking a look at Weapons and seeing where it ranks not only on the Scream scale, but also the kilometer. These are both systems designed to rank horror movies based not only on how scary they are, but also how gory they can be. We're going to recap the movie and then we'll rank it at the end. So let's get into it. The movie begins with a child narrator, who is very talented, might I add, telling us that what we're about to see is a true story, where a lot of people died in a lot of really weird ways, and that the cops covered everything up. Now, I don't know about you, but I am immediately intrigued. She goes on to further explain that the story begins in her elementary school, and that on one Wednesday, a teacher by the name of Justine Gandy began her day by showing up to her classroom, only to find that only one boy, named Alex Lilly, was present. The other 17 children were nowhere to be found. She goes on to explain to us that the reasoning behind this is that the night before, at 2:17 in the morning, all the other kids decided to wake up and run out into the darkness while listening to George Harrison. Which, to be honest, this is the exact same feeling I get when I listen to George Harrison too. Cut to present day, a month following the disappearance, where the school is holding a meeting for all the parents and faculty of the school. So Weapons is actually split up into acts, each with its own set perspective. Justine Gandy is our kickoff, though she's getting more kicked down at the moment. Parents of the missing kids are still grieving, some more than others, and most can't move on without answers, without solutions, without a culprit. Miss Gandy unfortunately represents all of this to a few of them, such as Archer. He is just all peeved off and is quick to splash the whole blame bucket on Justine. And Miss Gandy does not really make a good case. She gets escorted away by the principal, who is kind of like her only ally in this situation. Justine needs some R&R after that debacle. R standing for rum and the other R standing for really hammered. Like any public school teacher after a bad day, she finds herself at the ABC store, where she gets haggled by the nicest beggar of all time. She grabs herself two bottles of vodka. Hey, are you sure you don't want to get some rum chata while you're here?
You better watch your back, because tonight's your night.
Yeah, you're right. Let's just get out of here. Top 10 shows people getting drunk don't watch: Shark Tank. But Justine seems to be a professional alcoholic, so what do I know? She's interrupted from her pitiful pity party by a knock at the door. Frightened, she takes a minute to really investigate, but finds that someone has graffitied her car Salem style, and they must have used a really large Sharpie because it is pretty on there. The next morning, the principal, Marcus, who is played by Benedict Wong, temporarily fires her. But Justine knows that all flame is temporary and argues that she needs to work to take her mind off everything going on. She also insists on seeing Alex, which is pretty selfish, and the principal tells her it's not appropriate and she needs to keep her distance. She goes and has a boohoo session in her witchmobile and then calls the cops to report the vandalization. And while she's at it, she goes ahead and reports the threatening phone calls she's been getting too. But then she catches sight of a certain cop, and suddenly she's not feeling so sad anymore, so she goes and invites him to meet her at a bar. And it definitely seems like these two have some kind of past relationship, judging by the pushy, awkward dialogue. They talk about mundane things, including his work injury, and Justine cuts to the chase. She wants to know if he's still got a girlfriend, but he tells her they're not on right now. Whatever that means. Justine keeps trying to convince him to have a drink with her, and eventually, after a few arguments where he tells Justine she's being pretty selfish about everything going on, she succeeds, and then she takes him back to her place where the two spend the night together. She also transforms him into a pirate, which makes me think her car might be right in calling her a witch. Not gonna lie, Justine gets kind of annoying when she's driving Paul back to work the next day. That's okay, she makes up for it by following a little boy to his house though.
Wait, no, actually, that makes it kind of worse.
Alex's house is a little off. Newspapers stick to the window and the front door seems to open on its own. Miss Gandy sneaks to the back of the house and finds an opening on the window. She peeps her judgy little eyes through and finds two still figures. Calls Principal Marcus to tell him how she stalked a third grader and invaded his privacy. And you can guess that doesn't go over pretty well. Time to hit the ABC store again, where at least she knows she's safe. Only, it's not so safe anymore. Donna, Paul's girlfriend, shows Justine how it feels to be stalked and how it feels to have alcohol dumped all over you. She might like that part though. Justine has a pretty creepy nightmare of Alex in the classroom in his best Joker cosplay, and some scary lady morphing through her ceiling. Justine has become obsessed with solving the mystery after it has plagued her reputation and ruined her life. So she has a stakeout in front of the suspicious Lily house, which leads to the scariest scene in the movie. A woman bumbles out of the door while Miss Gandy is snoozing and breaks into her car, cutting off a piece of her hair. This scene works so well. We never see the woman clearly. She's always slightly blurred and moves somewhat unnaturally. Only see enough to know that she's clearly a threat. Perfectly crafted scare.
Love it.
Archer, our next character, has not adjusted well to his son Matthew's disappearance. If Justine is obsessed, Archer is consumed. He sleeps in his son's Batman-themed bed and dreams of happier times. His tragedy is destroying his work and personal life. The cops are sick of his gnat-like inquiries, and his constant attacks on Justine's character hold absolutely no weight. Archer is a man crippled by regret, belittling himself by vandalizing Miss Gandy's car. Turns out Justine isn't the only one having nightmares, as Archer is having dreams of ARs floating over people's house.
Which is maybe a little bit too on the nose of this allegory for me.
Also in his dream, he has a heart-to-heart with his missing son, where he apologizes for all the tough love he gives him and expresses that he wishes he had been more loving with him before his son pulls the sheets off his face, revealing the same lady we had seen before in Justine's ceiling. Inspired by his Batman sheets, Archer goes full detective mode, figuring out that his son has run into a straight line near a cell tower. And after speaking with the parents of another missing child, he confirms that the children were all running towards the same location. Archer drives around trying to figure out what this location could be before he spots his enemy, Justine, at a gas station pumping gas like the criminal she is. He confronts her, and the two get into an altercation before a familiar-looking figure starts running in the direction of the two. He knocks them over, seemingly trying to attack Justine, but luckily Archer defends her because only he can attack her, not anybody else, okay? He follows the typical arch-nemesis rulebook very closely. You might recognize this zombie as Marcus, the principal, who then attacks Archer, and we jump to our next character, Paul.
Hey, it's Cop Guy!
Paul is having a very personal phone call with his girlfriend, remember Donna? She tells him to pass some information along to her father, the chief of police, and tells him that he should try to hit up a meeting after work, which explains why Paul was so adamant on not drinking when he met up with Justine, and also explains why Donna was so mad at her. Not only did she get him to cheat on her, she also coerced him into relapsing.
You know, maybe Archer is right about her being some kind of villain.
On patrol, Paul runs across some guy trying to break into a building and goes all GTA chasing on him. And hey, I know that guy. It's the nice beggar from earlier at the ABC store. Paul tackles and cuffs him before beginning a search on the man whose name we learn is James. When searching his pockets, he gets poked by a needle, even after being assured by James multiple times that there was nothing in his pocket that would poke him. Mad at him for lying, Paul punches him in the face and realizes the camera in his car monitored the whole event. In order to avoid getting put on leave for his police brutality, Paul lets James go and threatens him so he stays away from the police station. This lines up in our story with the moment where Justine texts him to hang out. I really love how all of these stories are intertwined like this.
It's kind of like putting pieces of a puzzle together.
Following his night of shame with Justine, Paul happens upon James again, who's making his way towards the station. He chases after him in a rage, this time making sure to unplug his camera first. Then we jump to James, and I really enjoy how different his section feels. Slightly more comedic than the other 5, but it's not overtly so. James is just a nonchalant thief, managing to get right past this pawn shop's strict no sagging rule. James striking out at the pawn shop happens to try the Lily house as his next mark. There's good tension as he breaks in, as we the audience know something is weird inside that house, but the character does not. James holds off on jacking Alex's Peabody and Sherman DVD before bumping into the 2 statues from Justine's chapter. And you gotta give it to James, he just keeps on robbing them. He stumbles into the basement and finds, just all the missing children, all standing there motionless, very similar to Alex's parents. James heads to the station to report the kids and get his check, but gets real unlucky by running into Pissy Paul again. James escapes, making it to his tent, but finds a clown in a very Pennywise-flavored scene. Thinking that Paul must have really enjoyed that first needle prick, James gives him 3 more. James stops Paul from shooting his face off by telling him that he knows where the kids are and he can take Paul to the house where he found them at. They set off to Alex's house and Paul goes in to investigate. He stays there until nightfall though, and the next time we see him, he's creepily running towards the car to grab and take James. Marcus, the principal, is our next point of view. Get a recap of his phone call about Alex's house with Justine before cutting to the meeting with a very familiar face. She introduces herself as Gladys, Alex's aunt, and explains that Alex's parents are very ill and are unable to leave their home. She says they have a touch of consumption and they need to stay put. Marcus explains that he needs to check on the parents to avoid getting CPS involved, even though he is sure everything's fine. Cut to the next day with Marcus and his husband eating dinner in their amazing Mickey Mouse outfits when somebody rings the doorbell and surprise, it's Gladys? What are you doing here? She gives some weird story about missing the bus and Marcus's husband invites her in for some water, even though Marcus feels like it's probably a bad idea. They offer her a bowl of water at her request, and she explains that she spoke to Alex's parents and they will come in and visit the principal on Monday and get this whole CPS situation sorted out. She pulls some kind of stick out of her bag that has Marcus's ribbon tied to it. She cuts her hand open with the stick before cutting some of Marcus's husband's hair off, and then adding that to the stick as well. She rings a bell, which causes Marcus to stand still, similar to how everybody in the Lily household is. Then she snaps her stick in half, which causes Marcus to murder his husband. And this scene is honestly pretty hard to watch.
It honestly feels like the moment Gladys came into the movie, the tone took a little shift. Benedict Wong is also a real standout in this movie for me.
The makeup on him is pretty frightening, even if he is doing a 3/4 Naruto run. Gladys then wraps a piece of Justine's hair around the stick, snaps it again, and then we see Marcus take off after Justine, which we had seen earlier in Archer's point of view, but this time we get to see the conclusion, as Marcus runs out into traffic following the Witchmobile and gets hit by a car in another pretty gory scene. Archer and Justine have a heart-to-heart outside the hospital after the incident and agree to leave their differences behind. Archer shows Justine the map he had drawn up showing the pathing of the missing children after realizing that Marcus had been running in the same fashion as his son. Justine realizes that the place where the path intersect actually is where Alex's house is located. Alex is our final point of view and was definitely the most anticipated one.
I remember getting really excited when I saw his name appear in theaters.
For this, we go all the way back to before the kids even disappear, and we see that Alex was unfortunately a victim of bullying by none other than Matthew, Archer's son, which we can maybe chalk up to being a latter effect stemming from his father's tough love. We get to meet Alex's parents before they got turned into weird zombies. Alex's father has like this weird cool dad persona as he tells Alex that his Aunt Gladys is coming to stay with them tonight since she's pretty sick and needs someone to take care of her. But it turns out that nobody really even knows Gladys. She's Alex's grandmother's sister who couldn't even bother to come to Alex's parents' wedding. But regardless, she's here now and she's super creepy looking, but she does have this pretty cool tree that she brings with her. Back to Alex, who is having the worst day ever, getting pencils chucked at him, getting abandoned by his parents at school, and coming home to his parents sitting at the dinner table being all creepy. Aunt Gladys is here, now in her usual red wig we've been seeing the entire movie, and after Alex splashes water in his dad's face to get attention, she sends him to his room. The next day, she threatens him by telling him that if he tells anybody at school about her or his parents, she will continue to make them hurt each other. A few days pass, and Alex gets into a nice routine: soup, class, soup, class. You'd think he'd want to give his parents some variety, like damn. Gladys is rotting away. She requires the souls, energy, life force of children, which poor Alex is happy to provide in return for his hollow parents back. He steals a possession of theirs and gives them to Aunt Gladys, who summons them all at 2:17 a.m. for an unconsensual sleepover. Cut back to the beginning of the movie where we learned about the whole story in the first place, and we know that Alex was the only one who showed up to his class the next day. The police began investigating Alex, thinking he might have some answers, but Aunt Gladys was able to cover everything up by stating that his parents had suffered strokes and she was there taking care of Alex. And since she could control the children with her magic stick, she could hide them very easily. And, well, you know the rest from here. Back to present day, where Aunt Gladys is starting to get the feeling that the jig might be up soon. She tells Alex they're leaving tomorrow, but in the meantime, he needs to make sure not to step over the salt line that she set up in the house. Justine and Archer show up to Alex's house after figuring out that all the children had run in the direction of his home earlier, only to see Paul walk out of the front door and motion for them to come inside. They oblige and step foot into the house to investigate. Justine accidentally steps over one of those salt lines Alex was told not to cross, and all hell breaks loose. They get attacked by James and Paul while Alex is upstairs making the same mistake, stepping over the salt lines that was keeping his mother and father still. There's a pretty good fight scene between Justine and Paul, with the gore scene giving Evil Dead a run for its money. Archer continues to get attacked by James, who knocks him through the basement door, where he falls and catches sight of strange childlike figures standing in the darkness. Justine manages to escape Paul by shooting him in the head, before leaving the scene to help Archer out too. Now free from James, Archer runs deeper into the basement in search of Matthew, only to find Gladys lurking instead. She manages to add Archer to the list of people she can control and gets him to attack Justine. Alex goes into Gladys's room and gets hold of her magical stick, and having seen how Gladys works her trick, he's basically an expert by now, so he easily takes a strand of hair from her wig, ties it around the stick, and breaks it in half, sending all the children from the basement chasing after her, successfully catching up with her and putting an end to her and her evil ways. Once Gladys is dead, her hold over Alex's parents, the children, and Archer finally comes to an end, leading Alex to reunite with his parents and Justine, and Archer to find his son. Weapons ends on a pretty somber note. Not everyone returns from their statuesque states. Alex is without his parents, and maybe some of the parents without their kids. Sometimes there is just no going back. Not when a community is rattled, not when a tragedy spills, not when an evil touches a town. Weapons is a film about loss. Maybe it alludes to gun violence, maybe not. It doesn't really matter. It's not about tragedy, but rather the effect of tragedy. Archer is mild and obsessive regret, Justine becomes the proxy for the town to blame, Alex, a bullied victim, loses his parents, his only source of warmth. Then he becomes the trigger for weaponizing the children. The sky is as gray as the community. I think Weapons is so successful in its portrayal of loss, all while still cramming a witch in, of all things.
And that is the official scale recap of Weapons. So, is Weapons the best horror movie of 2025? That is the question. Weapons was definitely one of my favorite horror movies that has come out in recent years. I was super excited to watch this movie when it came out because Weapons was one of the only movies that I felt like had really, really good trailers. And then when I watched the movie, it 100% lived up to my expectations and maybe even surpassed it. If I was personally giving out awards for the best horror movie of 2025, I would give it to Frankenstein. But I think Weapons definitely deserves all kinds of praise that it gets. It is an amazing movie. As far as the scream scale goes, it's sitting at about a 50%, which I think is pretty accurate. Don't get me wrong, Weapons definitely had some scary moments, but I feel like the movie succeeds the most in creating feelings of uneasiness and building suspense. And all of this, of course, is thanks to the amazing directing by Zach Kreger and the acting from the very strong cast members that we had, like Julia Gardner, Josh Brolin, Benedict Wong, and Amy Madigan, who actually won an Oscar for her role as Gladys. Weapons was also kind of unexpectedly pretty gory at times, which is where the kilometer comes in. It's a scale to rank the movie based on how strong it was in the kill and gore department. And I would give Weapons a 3 out of 5 on the kilometer scale. Scenes with Marcus bashing his husband's head in and then getting hit by the car, I thought were pretty hard to watch. And then of course we had the amazing skin peeler scene with Justine and Paul, which was pretty hard to watch too. Honestly, the gore was a nice surprise in this movie. Weapons is definitely not a movie that's focused on kills, but the ones that were sprinkled in throughout were pretty impressive. The last thing we'll talk about with Weapons is the movie poster, which I really enjoy. I think it's pretty simple, but it's effective. All the key elements that you would associate with Weapons can be found in the poster, which I think is super important. And if I was ranking the poster, I would give it an A. So that has been the official Scream scale of Weapons. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the movie and my opinions down in the comments below, and be sure to stick around for when the next Scream scale comes out. I will see you in the next one.
Another one? Look, I told your little friend I ain't paying for that!
Well, this one's on the...